Ashwood's old department store stood like a husk at the edge of town, its glass doors smeared with dust and its mannequins forever frozen in last year's fashion. Locals said you could still smell mothballs and mildew when the wind cut through the cracked window panes. Sheriff Daniel Mercer hadn't stepped inside in years, not since the place shut down after the last recession. But that night, under the weak hum of a flickering streetlight, his German shepherd Rocco refused to move past the front doors. Hackles raised, ears pricked, the K9 locked onto the mannequins in the lobby. And then he barked. The echo rolled through the empty streets like a gunshot. Daniel tugged gently on the leash. "Rocco, heel," he murmured. The dog didn't heel. His whole body strained forward, every muscle taut. A guttural growl built low in his throat, directed at the figures lined up just inside the glass. They weren't threatening, not at first glance. Half a dozen mannequins stood stiff and tall, their plastic faces smudged gray from dust, dressed in sun-faded jeans and sweaters that had gone out of style years ago. But under the dim sodium light, leaking through the window, something about them looked wrong. Their arms hung too stiff, their shadows too heavy. Deputy Lisa Holloway pulled up behind Mercer's cruiser, headlights cutting briefly across the storefront. She stepped out, long braids swinging, flashlight in hand. "You sure it wasn't a raccoon?" she asked, voice clipped. "Raccoon doesn't make him sound like this." Daniel's eyes didn't leave the mannequins. Rocco barked again, sharp, insistent. His claws scraped at the sidewalk as he lunged toward the glass. The sound reverberated through the hollow building. Lisa squinted. Why would anyone leave mannequins like that? Thought they gutted this place years back. "They did," Mercer said. His stomach knotted with a feeling he hadn't had since combat, a cold premonition crawling up the spine. He shifted his weight, stepped forward, and pushed on the door. It gave with a low groan. A stale rush of air spilled out, thick with mildew and something else. Something coppery. Rocco bolted inside before Daniel could stop him. "Damn it." Mercer followed, hand on his sidearm. The beam of Lisa's flashlight cut through the dust motes swirling in the air. The mannequins loomed in the cone of light, their painted eyes glassy and unblinking. Rocco circled them, barking, growling, then snapping his teeth at one in particular. A female form in a pale dress, one arm bent awkwardly at the elbow. Mercer swallowed. The dog's instincts had never failed him before. Not in tracking, not in patrol, not in all the years since Mercer brought him back from the K9 Academy. Lisa moved closer, her boots crunching on scattered glass. "He's losing his mind over that one." Mercer lifted his maglite, angled it toward the mannequin. The pale fabric was stained, a faint ring spreading darker near the hem. Dust clung unevenly, and there was something about the way it leaned, not stiff like the others, but weighted. "Lisa," Mercer said quietly, "get the bowl cutters." "Now." She hesitated. "You think." "I don't think. I know. Go." Rocco clawed at the base of the mannequin, snarling. Lisa disappeared back outside while Mercer crouched, hand brushing against the mannequin's calf. The texture wasn't right. The plastic should have been smooth, cool. Instead, the surface was rough in places, sticky in others. A thin trail of dried brown seeped from the seam at its side. Lisa returned, breath sharp in the cold. She shoved the cutters into Mercer's hand. He worked fast, snapping the old chain that bolted the display to its stand. The mannequin tipped forward with a hollow thud. That was when the smell hit, sharp, undeniable. Lisa gagged, covered her mouth. "Oh, my God!" The dress shifted. A piece of skin, pale and mottled, showed through a split in the mannequin's back. Mercer's pulse thundered. He braced, pulled harder, snapping the plastic shell. The front cracked open with a sound like breaking bone. Inside, curled and bound with duct tape, was a girl. Lisa's scream cut through the store. The girl's skin was bluish, mottled, lips slightly parted. She couldn't have been more than 16. Mercer pressed 2 fingers to her neck, searching, praying. For a moment, silence. Then faint. A pulse. Weak, but there. "She's alive," he said hoarse. "Call it in. Now." Lisa scrambled for her radio. Rocco barked frantically, circling, as if urging them to move faster. Mercer worked the tape with his knife, careful not to cut her skin. The girl's eyes fluttered open briefly, glassy, unfocused. A whimper escaped her throat before she slipped under again. "We've got minutes, maybe less," Mercer muttered. He glanced back at the line of mannequins. They stood silent, unmoving. But now, under the flicker of the broken overhead light, they looked different, like hollow coffins waiting to be filled. Outside, ambulance sirens cut through the night. Townsfolk began to gather at the edges of the parking lot, faces pale in the red-blue strobe of emergency lights. Whispers spread like wildfire. Mannequin had a body inside. They found a girl. Who would do that? Mercer stood off to the side, arms crossed, jaw tight. The girl was rushed into the ambulance, paramedics shouting numbers, words he couldn't focus on. His mind stayed in the store with the other mannequins. Lisa walked over, voice low. That wasn't the only one, was it? Mercer's silence was answer enough. The next morning, the story hit every radio station in the county. By noon, state investigators arrived, suits and clipboards, asking questions Mercer didn't want to answer. He stood by the edge of the parking lot, Rocco at his side, both staring at the yawning black doorway of the store. The mannequins still waited inside, and Mercer knew one bark had saved the girl's life, but it had also opened a door to something far darker than Ashwood had ever seen. The store sat sealed with yellow tape by morning, its dark windows like the blank eyes of something that should have been left buried. Sheriff Daniel Mercer leaned against his cruiser, coffee cooling in his hand, eyes gritty from a night without sleep. Rocco sat obedient at his feet, but his ears twitched at every sound. The slam of a car door, the hiss of the autumn wind dragging leaves across asphalt. Deputy Lisa Holloway walked over, tired circles under her eyes, holding 2 steaming paper cups. She offered one. "Don't ask how many hours the diner's been open. Betty swore she saw me twice in the same shift." Mercer accepted the cup, nodding. "You sleep?" "Maybe 30 minutes. You?" "Didn't try." They stood in silence, watching the forensics team unload equipment. The girl, the one they pulled from the mannequin, was alive but fragile. Last Mercer heard, she was still unconscious, her body dehydrated, bones pressing sharp under her skin. Whoever put her there hadn't meant for her to last long. Lisa broke the silence. "State boys want to pull all the mannequins." "Good," Mercer muttered. "Every damn one of them." Rocco gave a low whine, eyes locked on the storefront. He hadn't stopped watching since the night before. Inside, the mannequins stood waiting. Forensics cataloged them one by one, snapping photographs, measuring, logging. Each was cracked open like a coffin. Some were empty shells. Others contained what Mercer dreaded most. Bodies. 5 in total, all young, all female. Duct tape, bruises, the same pale dresses disguising their plastic prisons. Only the first girl had been alive. Mercer stood over one mannequin as they lifted the corpse free. The face was frozen in an expression that unsettled him. Not peaceful, not afraid, but almost resigned. The girl had stopped fighting long before the life left her. Lisa hovered nearby, notebook in hand. Her knuckles were white. "You ever seen anything like this?" "No," Mercer said flatly. But part of him wanted to say yes. In Kabul, in Fallujah, in the aftermath of bombings, he'd seen bodies pulled from rubble, twisted and hidden in places no one expected. War had its own mannequins. But here, in Ashwood, this was something else. Lisa scribbled, then asked, "Why mannequins? Why go through the trouble of hollowing them out?" Mercer shook his head. Because whoever did this wanted them displayed, wanted them standing upright in plain sight. Her stomach turned at that. By afternoon, the parking lot had become a circus. News vans clogged the street. Townsfolk gathered in clusters, and the mayor himself arrived, sweating through his suit. Mercer despised scenes like this. Grief packaged into sound bites, horror turned spectacle. A man in a gray suit approached, badge flashing. "Agent Caldwell, FBI. You're Sheriff Mercer?" "Yeah." "Walk with me." They stepped away from the cameras. Caldwell spoke briskly, eyes hard. 5 victims so far. 1 survivor. All young women, ages 15 to 19. Matches several missing persons cases spanning the last 8 months. You know what that tells me? Mercer said nothing. Pattern, Caldwell continued. Organized, deliberate, escalating. Whoever's behind this isn't stopping anytime soon. That store's a dump site, but it's also theater. He wanted them found. Mercer clenched his jaw. Then let's find him. Caldwell gave a humorless smile. That's the plan. But I'll be blunt, Sheriff. This is bigger than your department. You'll take point for locals, but federal's running the show now. Mercer bristled. He'd spent years clawing Ashwood back on the brink, fighting meth labs, break-ins, keeping the town stitched together. And now some outsider was telling him to step aside. But he bit it back. Lives mattered more than pride. Still, he couldn't shake the thought, whoever did this knew Ashwood, knew it well enough to pick the old department store, a place people passed every day without a second glance. Outsiders wouldn't think like that. This was someone close. That night, Mercer drove out past the edge of town, headlights cutting through fields gone brittle with early frost. He needed quiet space to think. Rocco sat in the back, restless. Mercer stopped at the river bridge. Kill the engine. The only sounds were the water and the dog's steady breathing. He lit a cigarette, something he hadn't done in years, the smoke scratching his throat. His hands shook. Images replayed uninvited. The mannequin splitting open, the girl gasping for air, Lisa's pale face under the flashlight. His phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. The survivor's awake. Hospital wants you here. Mercer crushed a cigarette under his boot, started the engine, and turned back. The girl's name was Hannibal, 16, reported missing 2 weeks ago by her aunt after leaving school and never coming home. She lay in a hospital bed, for lines trailing from her arms, skin paper thin. Her eyes were open, though wide, bloodshot, darting to the corners of the room. Mercer approached slowly, Rocco at his side. The dog's presence calmed people. Maybe it would help her. Hey, Hannah, Mercer said softly, pulling up a chair. You're safe now. My name's Dan Mercer. I'm with the sheriff's office. This here's Rocco. The dog sat quietly, watching her with solemn eyes. Hannah blinked, tears slipping sideways into her hair. You don't have to talk, Mercer continued. But if you can tell me anything at all, it'll help us stop whoever did this. Her lips parted. Her voice was a rasp. They moved at night. Mercer leaned closer. Who did? Her eyes flicked upward, toward the fluorescent light. The hollow ones. Lisa, standing at the foot of the bed, frowned. The mannequins? Hannah's gaze locked on Mercer. Her voice cracked. They weren't empty. They were watching. Mercer's skin crawled. Hannah, who put you inside? But she shook her head violently, trembling, whispering over and over, they were watching. They were watching. The nurse rushed forward, adjusting her for murmuring comfort. Hannah's eyes rolled shut again. Mercer sat frozen, the words echoing in his mind. Later, in the dim parking garage beneath the hospital, Lisa caught up with him. She's traumatized, Lisa said. Hallucinations, maybe. Being locked in that thing messes with your mind. Maybe, Mercer said, though he didn't believe it. Rocco whined beside him, restless again. Lisa pressed on. Dan, this case is already pulling the town apart. My brother called from the diner. Says half the county thinks it's some cult. People are scared. And honestly, I am too. Mercer finally looked at her. You want out. Her jaw tightened. No, I just don't know if we're ready for what's coming. There was weight in her words. Something unsaid. Mercer studied her, but before he could press, his phone buzzed again. Caldwell. We found something in the mannequins. Need you here. Now. Back at the department store, the crime scene stretched under floodlights. Caldwell met him with a grim expression. We cracked the last mannequin, the agent said. Found a note inside, sealed in plastic. Addressed to you. Mercer froze. Me. Caldwell handed him a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a sheet of lined paper, scrawled in uneven handwriting. Asterisk sheriff. You don't remember me. But I remember you. I remember what you did. This is only the beginning. Hollow asterisk. Mercer's chest tightened, bow rising. The words blurred for a moment before he forced them into focus. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. Want to explain that? Mercer folded the bag carefully, voice low. Not here. He walked back toward his cruiser, Rocco pacing at his side, Lisa watching with suspicion. She'd seen his face when he read the note. She knew he wasn't telling them everything. And she wasn't wrong. Because Daniel Mercer did remember. Not the name, not the face, but the past. Something buried deep. Something that had followed him home from the war. And now, Ashwood was paying the price. The storm rolled in just past midnight, thunder rattling the windows of the sheriff's office. Rain streaked down in diagonal sheets, smearing the world outside into a blur gray. Sheriff Daniel Mercer sat alone in his office, the evidence bag with the note laid out before him. You don't remember me, but I remember you. I remember what you did. The words crawled under his skin like insects. He lit another cigarette, something he'd sworn off years ago. His fingers trembled as he drew the smoke deep into his lungs, then crushed out too soon, grinding it into the tray until the ash scattered. Rocco lay by the door, ears twitching at the thunder. The dog's presence was the only anchor Mercer had left. Everyone else felt like shifting ground. Lisa knocked once, then came in without waiting for permission. She looked soaked, her braid clinging dark to her neck. You should be home, Mercer said flatly. You should too. She nodded at the note. Instead, you're here staring at that like it's going to give you answers. Mercer didn't reply. Lisa stepped closer, lowering her voice. Dan, I've known you long enough to know when you're holding back. That note, it rattled you. Why? Mercer finally looked at her, eyes tired and haunted. Because whoever wrote it knows me, knows my past. You mean the war? He nodded slowly. I saw things over there, did things, and I've spent years trying to bury them. But maybe someone didn't want them buried. Lisa's jaw tightened. If this is personal, then it's not just about the victims. It's about you, which means every step we take from here is dangerous. Mercer leaned back, the chair creaking. Dangerous for who? Lisa didn't answer. By morning, another body was found. This time not in the Mannequins, but displayed in the window of a thrift store on the far side of town. A young woman, propped upright in a second-hand dress, her skin pale as wax. The storm had knocked out power across half the county. So when Mercer arrived, the body was lit only by the beam of flashlights. Her eyes had been sewn open. A note was pinned to her chest. You left me in the dark. Now I leave them. Mercer's stomach turned cold. Caldwell appeared behind him, voice low but cutting. Your ghost is costing lives, Sheriff. If you know something, now's the time. Mercer's hands curled into fists. He didn't answer. Lisa stepped between them, her voice sharp. He's doing his job. Don't push this on him until we have proof. But Mercer caught the flicker in her eyes. Doubt, maybe even anger. She was slipping away from him. That night, Mercer drove out alone. No radio, no backup. Just him and Rocco. He followed the back roads, gravel crunching under the tires, until he reached the ruins of the old Miller farm. The place had burned years ago. Nothing left but blackened timbers and rusting machinery. But Mercer remembered this place. In '03, before he shipped out, the farm had been a hideout for a boy named Eli Rowe, a troubled kid, always in and out of juvie. Mercer had arrested him once for theft. And when Eli got caught again years later, he swore Mercer set him up, swore he'd get even. Could it be him? Mercer stepped out, rain slicking his coat, flashlight beams slicing across the ruin. Rocco growled low, nose twitching. And then Mercer saw it. A mannequin half buried in the mud, its face cracked, hollow chest cavity smeared with old blood. He raised his weapon. Eli? The night answered with silence. Back in town, betrayal was brewing. Lisa sat in her cruiser outside the sheriff's office. Phone pressed her ear. Yes, Agent Caldwell. I think he knows more than he's saying. He's hiding something. No, I don't think he can be trusted. Her voice cracked slightly at the end, but she forced it steady. If it comes down to it, I'll handle it. She hung up, gripping the wheel until her knuckles blanched. The next day brought the twist Mercer didn't see coming. A call from the hospital. Hannibal, the survivor, was awake again, coherent this time. She wanted to talk. Mercer and Lisa arrived together, tension thick between them. Hannah's voice was weak but clear. "It wasn't a stranger," she whispered. "The one who put me in the mannequin. I knew him." Mercer leaned closer. "Who, Hannah? Who was it?" Her lips trembled. "Deputy Holloway." The words froze the air in the room. Mercer turned slowly to Lisa. Her face was unreadable. "That's a lie," Lisa said calmly. "She's traumatized. She doesn't know what she's saying." But Mercer saw it now. The late nights she claimed were paperwork. The hesitation when the mannequins were first opened. The quiet phone calls she thought he hadn't noticed. And worst, the doubt she planted in Caldwell's ear. Rocco growled low, teeth bared. He'd known before Mercer did. Lisa's hand drifted toward her holster. "Don't," Mercer said softly. Her eyes glistened. "Dan, you don't understand. I didn't want this. But I couldn't stop it once it started." "Then stop it now," he said. For a heartbeat, silence stretched. Rain tapped the hospital window. Hannah whimpered. Lisa's hand trembled over her weapon. Then, with a broken sigh, she let it drop. Tears streaked her cheeks. "I thought I was saving them," she whispered. "He promised me it was mercy. Better than what their families would do." "Who promised you?" Mercer pressed. Her lips parted. One word slipped out. "Eli." They found him that night, deep in the woods behind the Miller farm. A makeshift workshop filled with broken mannequins, blood-stained tools, photographs of every victim pinned to the walls. And in the center, Eli Rowe himself, gaunt, wild-eyed, grinning as they closed in. Lisa led them to him. Her betrayal cut deep, but she gave them the final piece. When Mercer cuffed Eli, the man leaned close, voice like venom. "You left me in the dark, Sheriff. She only brought me the light." The trials came fast. Eli was sentenced to life without parole. Lisa Holloway lost her badge, her freedom. She confessed fully, weeping as the jury condemned her. And Hannibal recovered, slowly, carrying scars inside and out. Weeks later, Ashwood's old department store was torn down. The mannequins were gone, but the memory lingered. On the last night before demolition, Mercer stood in the parking lot with Rocco. The cold wind swept through the empty lot, rattling loose paper across the cracked asphalt. Mercer lit one final cigarette, the glow bright in the dark. He looked at the hollow building one last time. Rocco pressed close against his leg. Quiet, watchful. "Good boy," Mercer murmured. He dropped the cigarette, ground it under his boot, and walked away. The mannequins were gone, but the silence they left behind would haunt Ashwood for years.